It's almost as if like this wizard puts a curse on you saying every encounter you have for the rest of your life is gonna be awkward as heck.
Hey guys, it's Kirbie. Welcome back to Pretty Unfiltered. Today my guest is Alix Generous. Alix is a scientist, she is an author, she is a hilarious human being, and she also just so happens to have Autism Spectrum Disorder, right? Which is formerly, you said something funny earlier.
The artist formerly known as Aspergers.
Yes. And today we are talking with Alix because she is really a champion for people with all types of disabilities, and she wants to help them better communicate with the public and the public better understand them. And because you are the public, that is why she is here. Alix, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
If you guys haven't seen her TED Talk, hello, what are you doing with your life? It's a full-on comedy show in my opinion, but it's a really great insight to Alix and her life. And so that's why I actually wanted her to be on the show today. So let's just kick things off. Let's talk about Asperger's in general, because I know a couple of years ago they stopped diagnosing it as Asperger's, right?
Yes.
Okay, so can you kind of explain to the people like the difference between Asperger's, autism, how they're related?
Basically, there was a switch with the new DSM that changed diagnosis from being autism and Aspergers to just being a blanketed term called Autism Spectrum Disorder, which can mean one of many things, obviously.
Okay, so let's talk about when you were diagnosed. You were diagnosed when you were 12, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so is that considered early or late?
Late for autism, for an autism diagnosis, yes. But it was 2005, and back then was a different time for people getting treatment. It was very different than what it is now, where everybody almost knows what autism is or has heard of it. Back then, like, I never heard of Asperger's before the doctor mentioned it.
Really? You were misdiagnosed 11 times, right? Is that correct?
Yes. My first diagnosis being bipolar disorder, which was a misdiagnosis.
Totally.
Well, what's interesting, the doctor wouldn't tell me what Asperger's was when I was first diagnosed. I remember reaching over for the pamphlet that he was handing my mom, and he's like, no, you can't see this right now. And when he kept saying Asperger's, I was just like, is he cursing?
Yeah.
Like, is that like a thing that people do now? They use food and curse words and put them together, like ho tacos and Asperger's, but so.
Alix, you're cracking me up right now. I know, it's a serious thing, but I love your perspective on it too. You have such a great sense of humor.
It was a 12-year-old perspective, and that was before I went to treatment and got help. That developmentally, I was probably even younger than that when I got it. So it was from that immature mindset that I was hearing all of these things.
So in your own words, like, what does it mean to have autism?
With me having autism, how it manifests itself in my everyday life is a lot of semi-socially awkward encounters. So it's almost as if like this wizard puts a curse on you saying every encounter you have for the rest of your life is gonna be awkward as heck. And sure enough, like, I do encounter a lot of it because I'm not always bubbly. I kind of am very direct with people. And so that's what it means for me, is having to deal with a lot of social deficits. And there's a lot of motor coordination things that tie into that, and sensory issues in particular.
I definitely want to touch on that because in your TED Talk you discussed how at one point you did not like the feeling of water. Is that right? Okay, so that meant that you weren't showering. So how did you get over that? Or have you?
Well, so to explain why I don't like water, when my hands get all pruny, I'm not going to say there's people out there who genuinely like getting their hands pruny from water. I don't think that's a thing. But when it would happen to me, my reaction to everything around me would be completely disproportionate to like what somebody without sensory issues. They would be like, oh, whatever, it's going to go away soon. But for me, my whole world was changed because everything else was more sensitive when my skin was wet. It looks different in everyone, but for me, it's in a lot of food. I have a hard time eating.
Alix, so what would you say is the biggest misconception people make or have about someone that has autism?
The biggest misconception that I see, at least, is people assuming that if you've met one autistic person, that when you meet another one, it's going to be similar or look exactly the same, when the fact is that there are different kinds of people no matter where you are, no matter what diagnoses or no diagnoses that you may or may not have. Mm-hmm. everybody's different, and you just have to play it by ear, essentially, when you meet people, and just don't be a jerk. So
yeah,
it's chill.
Just chill out. You're a person. Take it as it comes. I want to know, what's a big misconception somebody has had about you? That when have you ever confronted anybody about that?
Oh, it's some of the hilarious ones. One is that, like, I'm super introverted and like to read a lot. I have a really poor attention span, so I don't actually read. I like skim things, and I like to go out and do fun stuff. I just prefer to do it during the daytime instead of late at night when I'd rather be sleeping. So,
girl likes her sleep. So when you were diagnosed, Alix, how did it change your perspective on yourself, if at all?
Honestly, I was 12, and I had already been in mental hospitals by myself for 3 months. I was already severely depressed. I was in the dark, essentially, that when I heard I got a new diagnosis, it didn't faze me. I was like, okay, whatever. This isn't like the first time I got a new diagnosis. So I didn't have this whole aha Oprah moment where I'm like, this explains everything. No, it's not like that. It was more like, okay, I'm 12. I'm not at home. I'm in a mental hospital. Like, I took it day by day. It wasn't like a glimpse of self-understanding, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so just to clarify for the audience, had you been put in that hospital because of your misdiagnosis?
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, what happened is they thought I had bipolar, which is characterized by extreme mood swings, but really my mood swings were caused by sensory issues with autism. And so I was put on medications for bipolar instead of what would help with autism. And as a result, I had a lot of adverse symptoms, like my jaw would lock up and I'd have to go to the hospital and get shots, like little stuff like that. But I'm not here like talking about how my life is so hard and mental health, blah, blah, blah. My mind has a lot. No, it's not like that. It's just a fact of my childhood is I was put in these places and I was given these sorts of treatments to help with these kinds of issues. So
I want to know, what's your favorite part of yourself? What do you admire about yourself?
I give speeches around the world, and there's a moment when I give speeches where everything's coming out naturally and everything makes sense, but not only that, it's very profound because I can see several people in the audience crying over what I'm saying. Hopefully not crying because, oh my God, she's so awful, but like, no, it's so moving and so true what she's saying. And the ability to move people like that with such hard but necessary truths, to be able to communicate it, I feel very lucky to be able to do that. So.
And Alix also, she communicates those hard truths in a way that makes people feel, but she's also so funny, as you guys have seen throughout this entire interview, and that's another way of making people feel. So I feel like you do truly have such an awesome gift in being able to convey that to people.
Well, I'm sure, as you know, with social media, everybody is so serious about everything. If you post anything, somebody gets offended by it, and then it just creates this cycle of everybody walking on eggshells. And for me, how I've learned to break that with talking about mental health, because people get uncomfortable when you start mentioning like meds and treatment and all of that, is you just slip in some humor that even people who don't have mental health issues can understand, and they automatically are willing to listen more if you can make them laugh.
Exactly, because they feel like they can relate. That's awesome. I'm curious, so you are very accomplished, so I don't feel like this has affected your job, career, or goals at any point.
Oh, it totally has.
But that's what I figured. So can you tell me how it's affected you?
I have a lot of people who get the wrong first impression from me, and I've lost jobs from that. I was working with a kid actually doing therapy, and I was kicked off for not being outgoing enough. And the reason that I don't have that bubbliness is not because my actions don't correspond with that. It's because my face isn't smiling like a preschool teacher all the time. You know, it's just naturally what my face looks like.
What about your personal life? So you have a fiance. Tell me about dating. Was that hard?
Oh, dating is so like
in general,
awkward, and it's just uncomfortable. And like, basically, I've been dating my current fiance for almost 5 years now. But before that, I was like wild cannon in college. I don't really play hard to get. I just talk to people. You know, I have conversations, I ask them questions. And one of the things I find is people think I'm flirting with them when I'm actually just being nice, too. There's a lot of that. I think it all comes down to open and honest communication. And for me, communication was hard for me for the longest time because I was never taught the proper ways to express myself, which is a common thing with autism. It's not about just me being stuck with these communication issues. It's about really learning what I need to help improve the quality of relationships in my life.
So you learn those communication skills through school, through the schools that you were sent to, or what would you say?
Well, the best teacher is watching other people's mistakes, so you don't have to make it yourself. But I was explicitly taught certain social graces. My family taught me the manners, like holding doors open for people, don't put your feet on the white couch, like stuff like that. Yeah. But my school taught me how to introduce myself at a party, and they would do it by literally doing role play. And one of the things was like, no, your voice is too sing-songy, try again. Like that's kind of like, they would really go in depth with you, and they weren't gonna lie to you and tell you that you seem normal when you're acting really weird. And they're not doing it to criticize me and to tell me I'm awful. They're doing it to help me become more self-aware so I can really learn things that help influence how I appear to other people. And I think that's important for anyone who's a self-advocate for their own issues or their own struggles to know how to do.
You're amazing. And I really want to thank you, Alix, for being on the show. This is, mark it down, my favorite interview to date. You are hilarious and so insightful.
Thank you.
You're really doing something good in the world. And I really, for me, that's what the show is all about. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Where can we find you online? Is it just Alix Generous? Like
AlixGenerous.com. That I have a public Facebook page, and I check both regularly.
We'll put all of her information in the copy below so you can check it out.
And I have a Twitter too. Yeah.
She tweets away. She tweets. Alix, you're the best. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
I really, really appreciate it. Guys, let me know your favorite part of Alix's interview in the comment section below. As always, please subscribe to POPSUGAR Girls Guide. We have a new episode of Pretty Unfiltered every single Wednesday. And as always, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Kirbie Johnson. I also have a public Facebook page, Kirbie Johnson. We'll link to it all in the copy below. See you next time. Bye.